Recording in progress. So we've started. So let's have a gentle ease into this webinar then. So it's 9 o'clock in London. Good morning, everybody. And we're just waiting for a few people to join us. So we'll just discuss the weather and the time of day before we actually get into the nitty-gritty. It's snowing in Gothenburg, it would seem. It's wet in Copenhagen, and it's bright sunshine in London.
It has also just started snowing in Copenhagen, I want to add. At least in my place.
So we'll get started. I think we want to sort of start promptly on time, and I think we want to finish promptly on time as well. So welcome everybody to this rather special webinar on technology. My name is Andy Fairbairn from the Nordic Tourism Collective, and my thanks also to my colleague Nadia, who is ETOA behind the scenes running the platform for us this morning. So this is our first what we call Tech Matters discussion. And what we're doing is diving into technology and digitalization in our industry today. And it's such a huge subject, we can only really scratch at the surface. And what we hope to do is have subsequent discussions about any of the specific aspects that we might raise today. It's going to be a little bit different to usual because we're going to keep this to 45 minutes because we really appreciate everyone's time. We appreciate everyone is so busy. So we want to sort of be concise and really talk about some really interesting stuff, but not keep anyone around for too long. So we're looking at 45 minutes. Everyone has any questions, please post them in the chat and we'll get round to them and we'll try and answer those questions as and when we get to them. So we're absolutely delighted to have some esteemed guests with us today. So in no particular order, we've got Nikki Pagels. Is that how I pronounce it, Nikki?
Right.
Who is growth and commercial strategist at Profit Room. Good morning, Nikki. You're in Copenhagen. We also have Ludvig Olsen, who is business director, enterprise solutions at the Visit Group in Gothenburg, and you can see the snow behind Ludvig there.
Yes, unusual, but we have snow this morning.
And we're also pleased to be joined by Pascal Delamy, CEO and owner of Nitro Travel Solutions, also in Copenhagen as well. So good morning to you all. So just a bit of opening narrative from me, just to sort of set the scene. So technology, at the end of the day, is the glue that holds our entire industry together. It's also the oil that makes it turn efficiently, and it's also the window to our market and to our customers as well. And so what we'd like to sort of look at today is really how technology addresses some of the problems we now face as our industry struggles to cope with new challenges. And how can we best harness that technology and to enable customers to find you initially, to book with you, and ultimately to travel with you. And so what solutions are available to us now, and more importantly, what might be available to us in the future? How has this changed over the last few years? How have we changed in where we interact with technology? What technological processes should a business be aware of and should be using now? Where are we going in the future? And ultimately, what changes these means to our business? And we've been looking at this in three ways, really. We're starting with the customer facing. We'll start with the customer. Let's look at our technology and how we look at the customers. Then we can look at destination integration and how that has changed over the last few years and where that might be going in the future. And then we're also going to take a look at the B2B sector, and specifically with the group market, into how technology has enabled the transition in that sector as well. So I'm going to kick off with Nikki, who's got a little presentation for us about customer-facing technology, how technology helps us identify, communicate, and simplify transactions with our customers. Nikki describes herself on her LinkedIn profile as a sales ninja. So let's see what you've got to say. Nikki, maybe you can just introduce yourself, just tell us a little bit about what you do and your background.
Thank you very much, Andy. I'll share my screen first, just so I get the tech working first. So here we go. Right, and into the slideshow. There we go. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Lovely. Okay. So thanks, Andy, for the introduction. So my name's Nikki Pagels. You can say it however you like. It's absolutely fine. I am what you would probably call a travel tech geek. I've worked in the industry for 20 years on various different places, in tour operators, wholesalers, OTAs. I've worked in hotels, and more recently now within technology and systems. What I'm going to be looking at today is something called customer booking technology, and really exploring that from various different angles and taking a look at some of the trends that we need to be aware of, particularly in the Nordics, and as we go to develop our own businesses into the next kind of 5-10 years. So without further ado, I'll kick off straight away. So how do we book travel services worldwide? To give this some context, I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of hop into the past a little bit. So if we rewind around 10 years, we're in 2012, where the online travel market has really burst out into the main pattern of booking worldwide. Around about 50% of all travel bookings were made online in 2012. OTAs were very much leading the way in technological development, with Expedia and Booking.com at their helm. And the main device that we were all booking on was very much the desktop. Now, if we fast forward into 2022 and where we are now, we're now looking at around about 80% of all travel bookings worldwide being made online. 9 out of 10 of those are expected to now be made on mobile devices by 2030. And perhaps this is the biggest change that we can see within the next decade as we look at how customers start to interact more with their mobiles, and also how the importance of the smartphone starts to become more of a business process also for us within travel. So we're now looking at 6.6 billion people worldwide owning one of these devices, and around about 90% of those are used for daily transactions. So, have we kept up as travel businesses? Recent studies, particularly into the millennial and Gen Z markets, suggest, unfortunately, that the answer is no. A whopping 86% of travellers globally are still disappointed in mobile services offered by the travel segment, citing fragmented user journeys, distrust, and slow loading times as the main areas of improvement. So what can we do? I guess the simple answer for all of us is that we need to adapt our web presence towards the mobile device and build towards that. I often get asked questions relating to whether a business should invest in a mobile website or an app. I'd argue here the chicken really does come before the egg. A good mobile-friendly website is a first step. However, apps are becoming ever more relevant also in our space. So looking at some of the bits and pieces to maybe consider as you're looking at your own website technology and your mobile technology in particular, is that mobile websites are instantly available. Once they're built and they're instantly there. They also cannot be deleted by users, and they are the least expensive alternative of making yourself available on mobile. In comparison, native apps are fantastic tools in today's day and age for building communities and regular customer contact. They also can give you offline access to your customers, and they allow for push notifications, which will become a little bit more relevant later on. So does that mean that the desktop is dead? Here too, research suggests that the answer is no, unfortunately not. This might be down to a number of different factors, but most prevalent perhaps is our blended work-leisure lifestyles, where we often use laptops and computers for work and handheld devices for leisure. Also, the way that we book is often research-led. So at the moment, experts are suggesting that the average booker uses between 2 to 3 devices to research their travel before they book. So bearing all of this in mind, we need to be building towards the mobile, but we definitely need to not forget that the desktop exists. So in terms of device technology, where do we invest as companies? A recommendation perhaps from my side would be to look into something called device responsive website design, which essentially builds a website so that it can be viewed in different ways on different devices, rather than building individual websites that adapt to different devices. Maybe looking at some of the customer complaints as well around, particularly in terms of page load speed on mobile, can be something that you can do as an individual business travel or travel owner. Here I've put in a link to Page Speed, which is a Google platform totally free of charge that everybody could be using to check the page load speed both on their desktop as well as also on their mobiles. And the last piece is obviously taking a look at those apps, and let's dive into a little bit more detail there now. So the second piece that I'm looking at is how do travel services reach us and what's new there? Now, many of us within the travel industry would have seen a diagram like this before. Please don't be offended if your logo is not on here. It's simply because I ran out of space on my slide. And I know some of the other speakers will be talking about the B2B and B2C segments in a bit more depth in a second. My focus here is really to take a look at how the internet and the devices that we're booking on are changing the way travel services reach us as customers and how that's evolving. So if we take a look at my last piece now on mobile devices and how that is changing how travel services reach us, we start to see some new kids on the block emerge within our online travel sphere. Now here you can look at, for instance, instant messaging platforms like WhatsApp and WeChat, making an entry as communication tools to support suppliers, aggregators, agents, all of us really. The social media space is pushing itself more and more into video content, with TikTok very much leading the way there. The whole industry is also moving towards apps, and particularly closed user group apps. I've put a couple here. You may or may not have heard of them. Holland, for instance, is a festival app that allows you to book festival tickets as well as also travel to the festival and accommodation at the festival. Nomad X is an app used by digital nomads. You've got Plum Guide, which is in the luxury travel segment, offering tips and tricks on where to go, but also booking luxury experiences. And you've got, for instance, Off the Grid, that is also sharing various different travel content between explorative travelers. And it's not just apps, we're also looking at special interest travel websites emerging. So you've got the likes of, for instance, the FIFA World Cup. I don't know if any of you have traveled out there, but they actually have their own landing page built in now for travel services, everything from flights all the way through to packages to accommodation. And these guys are all entering our already complex world. So what's driving this change? I think one of the biggest questions at the moment being discussed is something called internet privacy. We've all felt the pain of changing business practices towards GDPR. And I'm really sorry to say it's not done yet. Privacy, and more specifically internet privacy, is the biggest topic affecting how we reach our customers and how we advertise to our customers in today's day and age. And this space is really worth following. So what's coming? The biggest change that we're perhaps seeing really around the corner is going to be starting now in 2023, is the removal of something called third-party cookies on the internet. Now, by cookies, I don't mean the edible kind. For those of you who aren't very familiar with what a cookie is, a cookie is essentially a small piece of data that is planted on your computer by the websites that you visit. There's many different kinds of cookies, but they're primarily used for session management, for personalization, so personalizing what you see online, as well as also for tracking. Now, the big change will be coming not in the first party cookies, that's already happened. And that came with GDPR, where you now have to click, yes, I want to see a cookie, no, I don't want to see a cookie. The change is actually coming in now where those cookies can go. So the sale of third-party cookies. And the biggest one will really be with Google, who will no longer support this as of next year. And that will affect all of us in the way that we track our customers, target our customers, and ultimately advertise to our customers. So with any change comes the need to adapt. Google is working on this, so they aren't going to leave us completely on the lurch. They're using something called consent-driven information and historical data, mapping that into machine learning, very complex models, to develop a new ad market Facebook have already converted into a cookieless world, so the change has already taken place in certain places as well. However, there's a lot that we can do as businesses, and here technology can actually really help us. So investing in things like CRM systems and making sure you have a good grip on your own customer data makes sense. Also, getting involved in social media and building those own communities is a good idea. And here too, building those tribal apps and getting involved in tribal apps can allow you to foster own communities and gain more direct customer data. Perhaps in the short term, even more relevant will be the need to invest in meta search. And I think this applies to the entire travel industry. Getting involved in the supermarket of meta and making sure you're indexed and available on those travel searches will become ever more relevant, as they do house the biggest database of travelers worldwide. Now, the last piece that I'll be taking a look at is how we pay for travel services, and particularly how our customers pay for travel services and what's changed in that world. Now, we live in a very fragmented travel industry, some of which is already used to using payment gateways, some of which is still considering doing so, and some of which is looking at upgrading their payment gateways. For those of you who don't yet have a payment gateway, essentially these solutions allow you to embed a payment solution on your own web page, getting transactions directly from your customer. Some bits to look out for, whether you're adding a new one or upgrading, is PCI compliance rules, not just within the EU, but also domestically. So here in the Nordics, there are differences between our countries, for instance, on where you can house transactional data, and it's good to be aware of those. Another good thing to take a look at is the use of tokens to encrypt data. In the simplest possible terms, if a payment solution uses tokens, they are likely to be using blockchain technology, which is the most secure way of passing financial data between different companies at the moment on the market. And the last piece that I'd say on this one is to have a look at the compatibility of the payment gateways to your market, as well as also to the markets that you're trying to serve. So here, for instance, within the Nordics, it's quite nice to be able to do bank transactions, whereas also making sure that your payment gateway can adapt to American Express and Diners Club, for instance, for the US market, is equally as important. Some models here to take a look at also in how you can make payments online. We've obviously got the traditional credit cards, which I think will remain forever because it's so hard to get rid of them. In the Nordics, more and more, we're starting to see bank payments enter the travel industry as well. We have mobile payment solutions that are already commonplace in other industries, like Swish in Sweden. You've got Vipps, which is DNB's mobile payment app in Norway, and you have mobile pay over in Finland. And these guys are all looking at ways that they can facilitate online transactions going into the future as well. And then you have something called BNPL payments, which stand for Buy Now, Pay Later solutions, which are also now becoming commonplace with online transactions, with Stripe and Klarna are both supporting them. Essentially, they are very good for experience-led and very expensive travel services where you might want to stagger the payments for customers as well. So what's next within payments? The next big horizon that we're looking at is now the invisible payment and the subscription payment and biometric payments. So invisible payments we already have on the market with the likes of Uber, where essentially you take a cab, you've registered your credit card, you get out the cab, you don't even see the transaction anymore. And that's likely to increase within our industry. Equally, subscription payments, where you take a regular payment from your customers for various different travel services, is becoming more commonplace as well. This is already something that other service-led industries like banks do already very well. And there too, the mobile device is leading the way in identifying customers with biometric payments already possible on certain devices. So that's it from me. Wrapping it up really from my side, where it comes to customer booking technology and what we need to be looking out for in the next couple of years in particular, is mobile tech is here to stay, and adapting our web pages towards them is definitely something to take a look at. Preparing for a cookieless world and how that will impact how travel services reach us is an important topic to look into strategically, and also looking into new online payment models and methods for your own businesses can be exciting at this stage. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Do you want to stop sharing your screen now? That's great. I think I need to have a lie down now after that. So thank you very much. There's quite a lot there. And I think what I would say to everybody is what we'll probably do is circulate some sort of survey or something after this. And I think if people want more information on any of the subjects here that we've been raising, and that also applies to both what Ludwig is going to soon talk about and also Pascal, then I think we can that leads us into our next discussion and where we focus on. I'd just like to ask you one question. Well, in fact, I've got lots of questions. I don't think I'm going to ask you any of them because there's so many, you could be here all day. But it's interesting that there's a huge generational shift, and 86% you said disappointed by mobile facilitation in the travel industry at the moment, which I think is quite shocking. But I think that the whole idea, it all seems to me to be moving into specialization in terms of sort of you become a specific specialist in a specific area, and you build your apps and you build your whole sort of you build your whole delivery system around that specialization, whether that's within a social media or within a native app, and it becomes, and then within that you build a customer group based around that, and that seems like an interesting development in terms of the way the whole, rather than just saying this is what we do everything, we really sort of narrow it down, and I guess that goes in time with, you know, everyone is they're on their mobile, they have an identity, and it's really delivering the actual product to the person that they want at that time. And I think is that an observation, Nikki? I guess it might be.
I think, I mean, it's all about personalization. If you think about it, the mobile phone for us now is no longer just a device. It's actually an extension almost to ourselves. And I think its relevance when it comes to how people book will only become more integrated into their lives, really. And that means that for us as businesses, we need to start thinking about how do we reach those customers on those devices and also gain their trust through that device. So I think it's device-led, but also generationally led by the market now also being run really by digital natives. Fantastic.
Thank you, Nikki. So we're talking about apps, we're talking about cookies, we're talking about meta search, we're talking about changes in payments. So as I say, we'll throw this out at the end afterwards for everyone who registered for the webinar. And then if anyone's got any feedback or want more information on that, maybe that's somewhere we will go with a subsequent webinar. Let's move on because time is pressing, and I'm conscious we've got two other guests we need to speak to. So Ludwig is based in Gothenburg, and he's business director at Visit Group. So maybe Ludwig, this is slightly different. We're looking at it from a different angle here. We're looking at destinations rather than the customers. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about Visit, who you are, what you do, and really where you're going with this. Over to you, Ludwig.
Yes, thank you, Andy. Thank you for having me. So Ludwig Olsson is my name. I've been working at Visit Group now for almost 7 years. I have a background from working with travel agencies in Sweden before that, but always been most interested in the tech side of our business. So today I have the opportunity to work being responsible for one of our business unit and work with most of our DMO customers. That's can be both member organizations, government funded, or commercial DMOs and DMCs. Yeah, I'm gonna talk a bit about where we come from, where we are right now, and what we are looking into the future if we're guessing today. First, just want to share I read an article on Skift where they said that travelers actually visit 38 sites on average to finalize and book their travel plans. And of course, as Nikki said before, this is cross-platform as well, cross devices. and it's emphasize how important it is that when they visit your site or your platform, we want to close that deal, of course, with that customer. And I'm going to try and see how we can do that in the future. Just a short background on Visit Group, where we come from. So for us, it started back in '95. There was a couple of students from Chalmers University here in Gothenburg that created a database of things to do in Gothenburg during the World Championship in athletics. And then also they matched that with a database they collected of the travelers that visited Gothenburg. And they realized that maybe this was an opportunity for them to actually build a platform around this for other destinations to use. But back then, of course, the world was a bit more easy when it comes to building a platform. So basically, they built one system where all the local businesses in the travel industry could add their products. So basically, allotment with prices and availability into one platform, and then that could be put online, but also booked in a call center, of course, or distributed through travel agents that could have a login into their own graphical interface to book a destination's products. And going back to what Nikki said, of course, a lot of things have happened since then. You know, in this industry, we always know that we will have travelers and we will have reasons to go. But how the traveler finds the reasons to go and also book the reasons to go, this, of course, changes all the time. But if we're looking from the destination perspective, the shift has also been because all the single property hotels or chains or the activity providers or the attractions, for example, they have, of course, their own systems today where they take control over their own distribution in different channels. They do that through a channel manager or something. So, of course, for the destinations, the world has become much more complex. But as Nikki told you about, of course, you know, the platforms out there for destinations is also very important to integrate with their suppliers or members to be able to sell products in real time. So what we're looking at today in our world is, of course, a bit more complex platform where all the external products you sell comes through integration, and us as a supplier needs to, you know, maintain over 100 external integrations to property management systems or other transportation systems, to say not at least payment service providers Nikki talked about before, to be able to retrieve payments, and then of course do all the reconciliation on paying out money. But also, of course, the distribution side of business has become more complex as well, where the destination needs to be sellable in multiple channels, both online, of course, but also we are talking about on-site sales. As Nikki talked about before, the mobile has more or less become a prolongment of yourself. So of course, when everyone is walking around also in destination with a mobile phone, we can find the customer there with a QR code or something where they easily can get access to products and book themselves directly in their mobile device. But we're also talking about self-service points, of course, and more point of sale solutions, also manned, of course. So it's a bit more complex world, but this is where we are today. So I usually talk about, okay, we come from the past where we worked with allotment. We are in the present now where everything is around real time. No one really wants to work with allotment anymore. It has to be real time. And we also see a trend, of course, after the pandemic, that the time from booking to arrival has getting a shorter time span, and this also has the needs for real-time integration and for the different suppliers and single hotel properties or activity providers to have their products connected in maybe 10 different channels at one time. If we're looking a bit more into the future, we see that how destinations will compete is to work more with personalization. And I will talk a bit more about this and where we see that heading, because it's all about how can destinations in this world compete with the online travel agencies, because it's hard. We need to be clear about that. Of course, they are big, usually a big American with a lot of funding. They buy a lot of online traffic. But of course, there is ways that destinations can compete, and then I will give you some examples on how we have customers that succeed with that. And I would say, firstly, you need to try and find products and or bundlings that is not offered by the OTAs, because the OTAs are not really good at doing this. And I have an example, Destination Gotland, a customer of ours that owns the ferries that takes customers to Gotland. And what they are doing is that package their ferry with accommodation, hotels, campings, but also cabins, etc. On the island, and they promote that online with one price, including both the ferry with add-ons on the ferry and accommodation with some add-ons as well. But the customer is always presented with one price, and the bundling makes it easy to market that a package offer as something that gives more value to the customer, but also a better price. And then, of course, you know, we talk about packaging with the reasons to go as well. And we have a lot of ski destinations that have been really successful with this. So I would say, look at what the ski destinations do, and what they're really good at also is to collaborate between each other in a destination. So what this means is that they themselves has created really strong sales channels where they can have the OTA distribution volumes really low in high season. And they are now also using that data that they have on their existing customers to promote also going to the ski destinations in summer and do activities there to also, you know, really reuse the capacity they have with the current customer data that already have. And then, of course, you know, it's really expensive to market a destination by yourself in another market, at least when we talk about online presence. So here, over time, I mean, the resellers and agents that you have play a vital role, but then they also need to have good tools at their end to be able to create the packaging offers and also, you know, really add value that is not able to find in the online travel agency world today. So that is some of the takes I want you to think about. If we take a more look into the future and how we see it, of course, data is king. So make sure that you collect the data. This is also, of course, a problem with distribution through OTAs, that they want to own the data and they want to own the customer with their loyalty programs and so on. But collect data, and on that data, create returning customers. A returning customer is much less expensive than a new one. And if that single customer that you had before don't come back, hopefully they can promote your destination to someone else. And then, of course, we're talking about a lot of personalization going into the future, to use that data to be able to actually, you know, present the right offer at the right time to the right person. and do this on your own data, but you can also use external data that you do not have maybe today. And I'm going to give you an example of that. Earlier this year, we acquired another company, a Dutch company called Ollery. And what they do is that they aggregate guest review data from over 15 external sources, and they also do sentiment analysis on reviews in plain text in over 15 different languages. And we hope that we could use that data to get more insight into what actually do customer from a specific market is looking for when they come into your destination. So we could know that, okay, if we are marketing ourselves as a destination towards the Chinese or towards the Americans, then we know already what they're looking for, what they like, what they would like to experience when they come into a destination. And also with this tool, we can benchmark different destinations towards each other. So you can also, get data from external sources that you can use, of course, manually to analyze and build, but hopefully in the future also work with machine learning there to really make an offer better to your prospects and your prospecting markets. So I think I'm going to stop there. I hope that gave you some insights. If you want to know more, please just drop me an email or have comments on this. I'm gonna head it back to you, Andy.
Thank you. Pardon me. Thank you, Ludwig. Again, very, very, very interesting. There's a whole sort of thorny subject there about competing with OTAs, but I think it follows on very much from what Nikki was saying in terms of the personalization of what people are looking for and the methods by which they book and how their destinations themselves can actually tap into that and actually use those channels and actually use the technology available to actually bring the actual desired product to the person who wants it at the time. And I think that's fascinating. And again, we're really just scratching at the surface here. And we could talk about this destinations technology for a long, long time. And again, at the end of this webinar, to everyone who's on board today, we will put out a survey and get people's feedback. And if anyone wants more information about this whole aspect of destination technology and where we're going with this, we'd be happy to host another webinar, or we'd be happy to put you in touch with Ludwig, and we'll see where it goes, because I think it's absolutely fascinating. So thank you very much for that, Ludwig. That's brilliant. Collaboration was just one thing I picked up on there, because it seems to me that the collaborative aspects of what we do at the collective is all about collaboration and how you bring different sectors together and different people together and how you work. And it was interesting to hear that by collaborating, you can produce unique products at the end of the day, which cannot be copied, cannot be duplicated by the OTAs or by other people, because you're actually creating something which is purely by definition unique. And that's quite interesting. So thank you again, Ludwig. And that leads a little bit more into Pascal, which is our final speaker. So this is slightly different, Pascal. So we're looking now at the B2B sector, because previously, I guess we've talked about directly to the consumer in the B2C area. But obviously the B2B sector is a huge area, and it's a part where, we at the collective, and certainly our friends at ETOA, we live in the B2B sector. So it's a massive area that we need to consider. So I'm going to just throw it over to you, Pascal. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do as an organization, and how technology has evolved within the B2B sector, and your involvement in that. Pascal, over to you.
Great, thank you. Let me just share my screen here. Are you seeing my screen right?
All good.
All right. Yeah. So I'll be looking a little bit this direction where I have the big screen. But yeah, I will cover inbound wholesales. We've been covering a lot of different parts of the travel industry in these sessions. So I will just I'll just tell a little bit about what type of inbound tour operators I'm talking about. But first, yeah, this is me. So I'm an IT guy. My parents used to have an inbound tour operator, and that was combined back in 2010. I started making some systems for them. In 2015, I founded the company Nitro Travel Solutions, which I lead and own. And we provide solutions for inbound tour operators. These, like a typical inbound tour operator, what I'm talking about here, the distinguishable traits are that they receive a quotation request by the outbound. Of course, you have to go and promote in different fairs, World Travel Market, more abroad to get the customers. You create a packaged tour with prices based on the conversations that you have. It's typically quite, what do we say? Quite complex products that you build. A 12-day tour across 3-4 countries, something like that. Could be. And then you book the services and you operate the tour. Yeah. So what I will cover in this presentation is some of the challenges faced today, the past systems and approaches to getting your inbound tour operator running, the present systems that are there today, here today, and some of the future systems. The challenges faced today are, largely led by COVID. There's a staff shortage. We've had 2 years without people really been able to work in tourism. People have found other jobs. Suddenly, all of our customers had to ramp up from 0 to 100 in the matter of a few months here in the spring. I'm sure many recognize this. The suppliers have had to do the same. They don't know the inbound tour operators anymore because it's new staff. Lots of things. It's been a really chaotic high season here after COVID. Yeah. So let me move on to cover a bit here about the different types of systems. I will be skipping these. That's a generation before. Although it's still the same things that are happening. But first, what I want to cover is that the solutions of the past has been islands of technology. You have Excel creating where you create the quotations. Then you create the itinerary over in Word where you write the tour. Then you have the communication coming in Outlook. And what is the glue? What's bringing the information around? That's the human beings. And while we are great at understanding what the customer needs, we're not super good at details. Now, of course, you can learn that and you can become really good at that, but it requires a lot of work. And also you have to do it all the time. But these islands of technology has been very approachable and they've been very flexible. That's very important because there were also systems available that you could actually buy. The commercial solutions of the past is what I've chosen to call them. But they were complex to use. They still didn't bridge all of the islands. The output that they made was often inflexible. So if you wanted to change something or change the rate or something, it was very difficult to do. And they were expensive, especially upfront, because you used to buy a system, put it on a server, and then you have it. Okay, you buy some licenses for it as well, but it's a heavy task. Now I'm talking about the past, but has the inbound actually dropped the islands of technology? Some haven't. There are many who are on the new system that bridge these gaps, but really they should have a look at it, because also looking forward in the future, you need more connectivity. Okay, I will save that for later. But they will need to be on a system. It will make that a lot easier. Today, as opposed to the different islands, you have a tech-assisted process. You connect the islands. You're still like building the tours where you have a description and you have some rates for calculation, but you connect them and the details flow between them. And an example is that it's faster to book when the system knows what to book, rather than the user having to type it in again, because they can read what it says over in the Word, then they type it in Outlook to order it with the supplier. Another thing is that the new systems are actually easier to use than Excel, Word, Outlook, because you have to know how to connect these things. All right. The current systems available right now, they allow for much more reuse of your data. You can see what you previously booked at. You can have pools of bookings that you can use internally in your companies. You have more flexible output. And an important thing is that you don't have to pay huge amounts upfront and have a server at your place. Now you have subscription models. It's in the cloud. When you have when you hire extras, high season help, you don't have to pay that license the rest of the year. You just have it in the months that you actually need the extra help. Yeah, so I will skip over to the future systems. What we will see is actually we'll see an increasing user friendliness in the that you know we somehow we continue to be able to make things more user friendly. You will see it expand to other areas that were previously very niche, and you really had to know how to run your Excel sheet precisely. That you can suddenly do much easier with these systems. So that's increasing all over the place. We get specialized systems. Booking connections will increase, and that's partly to be able to transfer these details even more, so it doesn't go through a email where the suppliers then have to read it, or they reply via booking portal, but the direct connections are something that we will see more of going forward. And then more use of your existing data. I mean, this sounds like an echo just before, but with Ludwig, but yeah, I see that as well. and less contract loading, less things, because you will have more on demand that you can see from the online connections. Yeah, when I was going through this, I was thinking, okay, tech assisted processes. Why isn't it tech driven? You know, why isn't it just the outbound operator goes to a web page and say, okay, I want 12 days in Copenhagen, Oslo, Stockholm, Finland, a tour more to the Baltics. The thing is that you have the human beings that need to really understand what does the customer mean. What do they actually? What would be a better product? What would be the services that they need for this? Often the inbound tour operators are a cultural bridge where you have Asian people working with the Asian markets, you have Latin people working with the Latin markets. So you need that human to really understand and provide good solutions for what they need. And of course, it's part of the inbound operations, someone that takes the responsibility of handling this. Yeah. Okay. So these systems, what does it mean to your business? Well, if you're still on the past systems, the islands of technology, you should really research the market, see if you're using to see which is the best tool out there for you. It will have a huge impact on your business when we're going forward. The subscription model thing, they continue to just be updated. So if you're on a system now, it will bring you into the future. If you're not, you really need to go that way, because it will be more and more difficult to have people moving the details around. Yeah, I think that will wrap it up for me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. That's very interesting. I think the one of the interesting observations from my perspective is very much that it's like what we've spoke about, that the islands and different people did different things in different areas, and technologies bring everything together. So the whole B2B sector, I mean, I know that many of our colleagues in the B2B sector are inundated, as you say, with work at the moment, because they're A, understaffed, but B, they're suddenly seeing this explosion of demand from many of the overseas markets. And a lot of the market demands are very similar. So you might get like 10 quotes or 10 requests for the same thing. And I think just if you don't have these systems in place, and you don't really have the efficiencies that the technology can provide, then you just run yourself ragged and stupid. And it's really, you can only really survive in this day and age by having technology which works for you in this way. Interesting, Nikki. We actually ran over time, but anyway, we got about another 4 or 5 minutes left. So we're just a couple of things. I think it's all been very interesting, and I think there's so much here we could really go and dive into all sorts of areas. But I don't want to, because we're going to end up sort of getting very technical. But there's a few things which came up. Obviously, data prediction and the use of data is, whether that's in a destination, whether that's in a B2B environment, whether that's through an app, or whether that's through a mobile website, or whatever it might be. But the actual use of data and how data is collected and how data is used is going to be supremely important in the future. And that sort of raises a sort of slightly thorny area, or the slightly dodgy area of machine learning and AI. and all that. How is that something we should be worried about, Nikki, or is that something that is that already with us, or what's your spin on that?
For me personally, I think it's already with us. I think machine learning is something that is not only unavoidable, but it is actually the future. We now sit in a world where data is gathered from so many different touch points within all of our businesses. Essentially, what machine learning does in its simplest format is allows us to analyze that data in different ways, creating different business solutions for us that will propel us into the future. That's my personal take.
Okay, and I guess, Ludwig, that's the same in terms of your review aggregation, in terms if you have a Chinese group arriving or you have a Chinese visitor arriving in Gothenburg, for example, if you're integrated, you have that data, then you can provide the services in the resort or in the destination, which is purely tailored to that, to the requirements that, and you would never be able to do that had you not at least some sort of machine learning, which has enabled you to actually appraise that data and actually analyze the data and then deliver on that.
Exactly. But I think there will be a lot of services coming up also where you can buy aggregated data, as I showed as well, you know, because big tech, of course, not only in the travel industry, but, you know, they are all already here when it comes to big data and how to harvest and how to use that. You know, some might think that, okay, but how are we going to compete with them? But, you know, we can be reliant on that, you know, as a destination or as the local destination, we have, you know, the reasons to go, and that's the most important. And since we sort of own that ourselves in the destination, we can also take control over how that is distributed. But of course, we have to be smart. So, you know, we will always be dependent on external channels where, you know, we will have a distribution cost. But if we work in the right, you know, direction, then we can create as much direct traffic as possible and keep the money in the destination, because that's what it's all about. Not having, you know, the distribution cost be so expensive to money leaves the destination. It needs to stay in the destination so we can reinvest in the product itself.
And Pascal, just one final question to you. Nikki talked a lot about mobile technology. Is that something which you're seeing? Is that something that is, or is that sort of, is that not in the B2B sector? Yes. Is that something which is, you're seeing a little bit of that or not?
So it depends. The thing is, you have different types of companies, but what we often see, we are a backend system, but of course our customers are also a wholesaler and intermediate. And what we see is, because we did have a little venture out in mobile itinerary apps and all kinds of things, directly facing the customer, but we see that the customers of the inbound tour operators often actually want to own that what's the presence towards the customer, and they want their own. They want it to look the same whether you go to Copenhagen or you go to Rome or wherever, and across all of the intermediaries. So while it is something that we have experimented with, we have to accept the intermediate roles, and we have to play on our strengths, because that, you know, the intermediates are really good, the inbound operators, at doing exactly their job.
I understand. That makes perfect sense. Listen, it's according to my clock, it's 9:58 in London, which is amazing. I'd just like to and I'm going to try and summarize it. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'd just like to thank everybody that's watching. There will be a recording of this available on the ETOA website and on the Nordic Tourism Collective website probably in the next couple of days. If anyone wants any information on any of the subjects that we have debated or talked about this morning, then please feel free to contact any of the panelists or myself at the collective. We will actually, as I said earlier, we will actually be sending some sort of thing out and to get feedback. And if there's a sort of groundswell of views from people that we actually want to discuss some of these subjects in a bit more detail, then we will do that. I've just got a quick question coming in. Someone saying thank you. That's good. Okay, fine. So I would just like to conclude by saying generational shift. We're moving into new territory. Mobile is an extension of ourselves, which is a really scary thing to say. Thank you for that, Nikki. That's going to live with me for a long time now. As an industry, we need to adapt. We need to look at new channels, new payment channels. We're moving into a new environment, online environment. Destinations need to work in real time, and they need to look at delivering products to individuals by collaboration and by using integrating systems. We're delivering efficiencies and cost savings. Thanks to everybody. Really brilliant seminar. I really enjoyed it very much indeed. Thank you to Ludwig. Thank you to Pascal. Thank you above all to Nikki for sort of being the sort of driving force behind getting this off the ground. Thanks again to Nadia behind the scenes. It's 10 o'clock. Thanks very much. Merry Christmas to everybody, and we'll see you all in the new year. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye,
bye.
everybody.